It's been a terrible war, should have ended, and Russia should have stopped it. But they've been 3.5 years and they've gotten not so far. So we'll see what happens. But the other side can fight too, and they've proven that. Maybe it could be that Russia's a paper tiger. I don't know what they are, but 3.5 years of fighting and killing everybody, of killing 7,000 people a week for nothing, for nothing.
All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today is Monday, October 13th, 2025, Missile Monday. And I have this article from Newsweek. And it reads, Putin, Russia is developing new nuclear weapons. So I'm just going to go into this article and bring out a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And it says, Russian President Vladimir Putin said Moscow expects to announce soon a new nuclear weapon. It's like a new weapon that it has been developing and testing for its vast nuclear arsenal, the world's largest, and warned that an arms race is underway. And indeed, Russia does have the largest nuclear arsenal, and then second place would be America, because those are the two nations that possess the most nuclear weapons out of all of the current nuclear armed nations, and they said arms race is underway. Well, it's been underway, just like during the Cold War or after World War II. And during the Cold War, the United States and Russia were at an arms race, to develop their nuclear arsenal. And we clearly see, Russia is ahead of America, but again, it hasn't stopped. And even if, another arms race, which I, personally believe still is taking place, because you still have different nations like China, North Korea, developing these different, ICBMs, for this coming Third World War. So an arms race is underway, but we know it's primarily going to be between the United States and Russia. So continuing, it says, it comes as the New START treaty between the U.S. and Russia restricting nuclear weapons is set to expire in February 2026, and tensions with the NATO alliance escalating sharply over the ongoing war in Ukraine. There is a growing risk of a direct clash between Russia and NATO. Western allies accuse Russia of serious airspace violations, sabotage plots, cyber attacks, and more, which Moscow denies. Both sides characterize the conflict as a form of war, in which that is a form of war. Propaganda is a form of war. Excuse me, Slakia. This is the sophistication of our nuclear deterrent systems is higher than that of any other nuclear state. State news agency TASS reported Putin as saying, originally in Russian, and we are developing all of this very actively. The Russian president, who was speaking at a press conference in Dushanbe, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Tajikistan at the end of a summit of former Soviet states, added, what I spoke about in earlier years is all progressing. We are bringing it to perfection. The Kremlin has said it would uphold New START's obligations for a year from its expectations. From its expiry. The Kremlin has said it would uphold New START's obligations for a year from its expiration. President Donald Trump has responded positively, calling it a good idea, but there is no new formal agreement in place to extend or replace the treaty. According to the Federation of American Scientists, Russia has a total inventory of 5,459 nuclear warheads, of which 1,718 are deployed. The U.S. has 5,177 warheads, and it's like it says, of which 1,770 are deployed. So again, these are the two main nations that possess the most, nuclear warheads. And it tells you, man, Russia has more than America. It doesn't have a significant, amount more, but they still possess more. Why? Because it's prophecy that Russia is going to take down America, regardless if you believe it or not. It says in his remarks, Putin also said that a certain kind of arms race is indeed underway in the world and warned that some countries are preparing for testing of nuclear weapons. He did not specify which, and we should know which. Just offhand, we know China, and I just seen, an article earlier, North Korea, yet again, parading another one of their, ICBMs in the street. So they're pretty much getting their weaponry ready for America, because this is what these different nations are doing. They're gearing up for war to come up against this place, So again, these different nations that have these weapons are going to be doing testing, if they're not already. It says, but this is also well known to experts. There's always the temptation to check the effectiveness of the combat fuel that has been restored in missiles for many, many years, Putin said per TASS. Everything is simulated on computers, and specialists believe that's sufficient, but some of them think it's necessary to carry out real full-scale tests. And in some countries, as far as we know, they are considering this and even making preparations. Putin continued, that's why I said that if they conduct tests, we'll do the same. Is that good or bad? From the standpoint of ensuring security, is good. From the overall perspective related to the deterrence and actions aimed, if not at reducing, then at restraining the arms race, it's probably not bad. And again, man, it just goes to show you that, Putin isn't playing, man. Putin isn't playing, and 47, he should know by now that Putin isn't effing around. He's not at all, and he's letting it be known that if the United States conduct nuclear tests, then Russia's going to do the same thing. Because that's pretty much what America wants. It wants everyone to, restrict, their nuclear weapons. I know Iran in particular, they want Iran to restrict their nuclear weapons, and not develop them. Meanwhile, the U.S. is developing weapons and conducting tests. So that's the standpoint that Putin is taking. Well, if the United States is going to conduct tests, then Russia is going to do the same thing, And it says, in the same context, we have proposed extending the New START Treaty for at least a year. Let everyone think about it. So again, this is Putin on his own merit, keeping his end of the bargain by extending, that agreement between the United States, Russia, with the New START Treaty to restrict nuclear arms, from being developed or just to restrict them in general. But he said he'll only do it for a year. Now, we don't know exactly how long America has left to rule. Now, again, we could be here, until 2027. Possibly, this is just me speaking as a man. Possibly we could be here till the end, but we'll just have to wait and see. But again, man, This just goes to show you that, again, these different nations are gearing up for war to come up against this place. These different nations. So I'm not going to make this one too long. I'm going to start with the book of Joel, chapter 3, and verse 9. And it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I am strong. And indeed, this is what these different nations are doing. Russia, China, North Korea, these different nations, are exhausting their resources into their military. They're upping their nuclear arsenal. Hence the saying, guns and butter. The guns referring to their military, the butter referring to, their economy. So right now, these different nations are putting, a lot of or most of their resources toward building up their military, and in particular their nuclear arsenal. You can see this with China, North Korea, and Russia. Just these three nations alone, they're getting ready to come up against Babylon, and it's inevitable, it's going to happen. This place is going to be invaded by foreign troops very soon, So let me grab that real quick. I'm going to get Ezekiel chapter 38. I'm going to start at verse 1, and it says, and the Lord said, and the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. And again, the word Russia is a Hebrew word, which it will be Ra'ash Shar. The word Ra'ash, meaning head or chief, Shar meaning prince. So the chief prince, man, Russia, is going to come up against this place, Verse 3, and it says, and say, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Right, man. The Heavenly Father is putting that old USSR spirit back on Russia. It's the reason why, they're, just as bold as they are now, because again, just like the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had about the statue, the feet that is mixed with, the iron, part clay, that's talking about America. It also speaks of, the feet being struck, with a stone, because again, we know that stone is going to be our Lord Yahweh Shai. But again, man, Esau Edom is really going to take himself down, on a small scale, because those Russians are Edomites, and we're not going to be ignorant. We do have, Israelites that are over there, because again, we're scattered all over the world, and you do have Israelites that are over there in Russia. And of course, I'm sure the ones that are over there, most of them don't look like your typical, Negro, Latino, or Native American. They look, like the people of that particular land. They obviously speak the same language. But again, those Russians are Edomites, and they're going to take themselves down. Esau's going to take himself down. The European Edomites are going to take down the American Edomites. But on a much grander scale, Yahweh Shai is going to take down all of these nations, that are gearing up for this Third World War. Verse 5, it says, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet, Gomer and all his bands, and the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. And right, these are the different nations, that Russia's going to be a guard unto, all of those different Arab nations, the UAE, you know, those different, Hamite countries, Ethiopia, you know, it says Persia, which, Persia today is Iran, which would be, Elam or Elam, whichever is the correct pronunciation, the so-called East Indians. Russia is going to be a guard unto these different nations, you know. Verse 7, it says, Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. And right, man, Russia is going to defend its allies, because unlike the United States, the U.S., it doesn't has anyone's back besides, the white flag with the hexagram on it, with the blue hexagram on it. That's really the only country that America is backing. Other than that, they don't really have their allies back. Like Germany, was seeking, nuclear help from America, and, America pretty much gave Germany the finger, which is why Germany is either looking to, France or, Britain for help during war, because again, they don't have faith in America, just like Japan. Japan also, questioned if America would have its back during, a time of war. And they don't, because now they want to develop their own nuclear missiles. Now, will they? We'll just have to wait and see. And even if they do, ultimately, they're just going to build them to come up against America. So I'm going to jump to verse 10, Ezekiel 38:10. It says, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, and it shall also come to pass that at that same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. And what's that evil thought? To come up against this place, to invade this place. Why? Because America has never been invaded by another nation. It has never seen war. Now, of course, America had the Civil War back then, the different wars that took place in this land, amongst itself. But what? America has never been invaded by another nation, just like, they'll go to other countries, send their military over there, bomb the place to hell and back. That has never happened to America. But it's going to happen. Foreign troops are going to be over here, and they're going to be under, whatever name, whether they be, UN troops or New World Order troops, whatever they're going to go by. These different foreign troops are going to be over here, and their only orders is going to be to, execute you on site or to haul you off to a concentration camp, excuse me, which most of their orders is just going to be to, execute you, because they're not going to F around, man. Very serious times we're living in right now. Verse 11, And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates. All right. America is a land of unwalled villages because, usually a city will have, a wall around it. But what? America doesn't have, any walls on its borders. Now, yeah, on the southern border, that particular wall only stretches so far, but what? Even Canada borders America. It's not just Mexico, but Canada borders America. You can go from, Canada to America. There's no fence. There's nothing there. You can stroll right in. Like I'll use, for example, here in Michigan, like, Detroit in particular, Canada is just on the other side of the Detroit River. Windsor, Canada in particular, we can just take the bridge to get over there, or, obviously, the Coast Guard will stop you, but you can just take a boat straight across, the river to Canada. It wouldn't take that long, But overall, this is the land of unwalled villages, so these different troops are going to invade this land, and they're going to terrorize the American people, So I'm going to get the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, and verse 16. It says, Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals and the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy and right man. This is what this is talking about. The smith being these modern day scientists and physicists that are behind creating these nuclear weapons. Because what does a blacksmith do? They create weapons, and not just any weapons, weapons of war, and this is what these modern day scientists are doing. They're not only creating weapons of war, they're creating weapons of mass destruction, because these nuclear missiles have the capability of literally destroying the planet Earth, but as it says in the scriptures, the earth abideth forever. So that planet Earth won't be destroyed, but America, aka Babylon the Great, will be destroyed. The land of Israel will be destroyed as well. But it will be built back up. Jerusalem is going to be made beautiful again. And that's the waster to destroy in this verse. The nuclear weapons themselves, because they're going to do a lot of damage. Will other lands get hit? I'm sure they will. Just me from speculation, because I personally believe America is going to bomb back. They're going to get their licks in, but for the most part, this place is going to be utterly destroyed by these different nations. So I'm going to get the book of Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 5. And it says, For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood. But this shall be with burning and fuel of fire and right. This coming Third World War isn't going to be a traditional war. Just like you would have men on one side of the battlefield charting, men on the other side of the battlefield, meeting in the center, having different weapons of war, swords, spears, shields, bucklers, these different things, bow and arrows, hand-to-hand combat, this coming world war is going to be fought with these nuclear missiles, And as I always have to make mention, you will have ground troops that are going to be going to war with each other. But again, that's primarily how this war is going to be fought, with these ICBMs, So I'm going to jump to Isaiah, the 13th chapter. It's like, yeah. And verse 4, this is Isaiah 13 and 4. It says, The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. All right, man, that great noise that it's talking about is those missiles, the warheads in particular, because you're going to hear them before you're going to see them, because they're going to make a loud noise. Why? Because it's going to be that rocket propulsion system that is going to be guiding these missiles to their target, which is where? Here in America. And it doesn't matter where, these missiles land. Just know that their target is Babylon, And are certain cities and states targeted? Yes. There's a missile out there, waiting for Texas, California, New York City, these different places, man. But this land as a whole will be destroyed. Verse 5, it says, They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord and the weapons of his indignation, to destroy the whole land. All right, that's what's going to happen. These missiles are going to be launched from one end of the earth and land on the other, So they're going to be launched from Russia, and they're going to land in America, These different nations that are against this place, they're going to be launched from afar and land here, wherever they're slated to hit. Whatever state is not just going to be certain parts of the land. No, this entire land will be destroyed, because like it says, these are the weapons of the Lord's indignation, because we have to remember, yes, Esau Edom's blessing is the sword, pursuing to Genesis 27 and 40, but these nuclear weapons in particular, they're the Lord's weapons. The Lord gave Esau Edom the knowledge to bring forth this technology, ultimately to take himself out on a small scale. But our Lord Yahweh Shai is going to take him out, him along with the angels, are going to take him out. It's a very serious times that we're in, man. I want to keep saying it because we are. These different nations are ready to take down this place. So I'm going to end it with this. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 9 and verse 15. And it says, "And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men and write." It's like it says in Revelation. It's like in Revelation chapter 7. It mentions, the four angels, which these are four literal angels. And it speaks of, them holding back the four winds, which the four winds represent the destruction, World War III in particular. Because as it says in Revelation 9 and 15, there is a particular, hour, day, month, and year when this war is going to take place. And the Heavenly Father already has it set when he wants this war to take place. There's a particular time, there's a set time, So once that day comes, those angels will be loosed, to pour upon the earth that great destruction, And just like it says, for to slay the third part of men, because you have three classes of men on the earth. You have the sons of God, which today are the biblical Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. The tribe of Judah, all the way down to the tribe of Issachar. You have the sons of men, which are you different heathen nations. And you have the sons of the wicked, which are the nation of Edom, you so-called white people. And this is who this destruction is for. It's for you, And you will have 2/3 of the nation of Israel that are going to get caught up in this destruction for their wickedness, and you heathens, as I say as always, man, you're just collateral damage. Because if you aren't able to return to your homeland before this war takes place, then that's all you're over here in America to do, is to make your little money and die, And this is the time that we're in, we're getting closer and closer to the day of the Lord, So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakak Wadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the artists of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till the next time I say, Shalom.